Hi, we are ready to look at our next data lesson, and it is on line graphs and broken line graphs. Line graphs are used to display information that shows a trend or compares changes over time. Line graphs are often called broken line graphs. So let's look at a line graph or broken line graph. You'll see that the graph has a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. And on the horizontal axis, there are labels so that we know what the data is represented. So we have a title for our graph, the temperatures at a family reunion. And then on the horizontal axis, we see this is time throughout the day starting at 8 a.m. going to 4 p.m. And on the vertical axis, we see the temperature starting at 65 degrees and going to 90 degrees. So when we look at a line graph or a broken line graph, we try to determine the purpose of the graph. What is it showing us? What changes can we see? What are the trends? So in this case, in the family reunion, we can see that at 8 a.m., the temperature was a little below 70 degrees. The temperature began to rise. Then we see that it was rising pretty quickly between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. It continued to rise. It leveled off about noon, and then it dropped a little, and leveled off again. So again, when we look at a line graph, it is a picture of changes over time and trends. So I'm going to have you look at a graph. You can see the title, you can see the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. So I want you to look at this graph. We are going to be discussing it in school on Monday. What conclusions can you draw from this graph? What things can you tell me about the trends in this graph? Then I also would like you to construct two different graphs. The first one is fairly simple. The number of hours slept each night during the week. So this is the data for you. We've got the night of the week and the number of hours slept. So I'd like you to create a line graph that is going to show me this title. The horizontal axis should be your nights, and you can just use an abbreviation for SMT. And then your vertical axis will be the number of hours slept. Determine how you want to set up your graph in terms of the numbers. The second graph that you'll be creating, and again checking for your understanding, is a temperature graph similar to the one we looked at. This is for Boston, Massachusetts. You're going to make a line graph and you're going to show this information. So again, your horizontal axis will represent the months of the year. And just like in the earlier graph, you can use the abbreviation, just the first letter. And then the vertical axis will represent the temperatures. When you do your graph, we look back to this graph, we would go over to 8 a.m. up to about 66 degrees, plot our point. Then at 9 a.m., we're going to go up to about 70 degrees, plot our point, connect the 2 points. Then at 10 a.m., plot our point at 80 degrees, connect the points. So you'll be doing that. Again, we'll go to this graph and this graph. You'll be constructing two line or broken line graphs to show that data. The next graph that I want to show you is called a double line graph. So this has two broken line graphs on the same set of axes. So we've got the horizontal and the vertical. The only difference is that you'll remember that first graph we saw, we've added some additional information. And these graphs are used so that we can compare information, and we need to pay attention to our key. This is a graph key. And so we see the earlier information about the outdoor temperature, and now this graph adds the indoor temperature. So we can see at the family reunion, during the time that it got hot outside, people may have been inside and it was a pretty constant temperature. So if I wanted to create my double line graph, I could do that by selecting my pen and being ready to create my data. And again, I am going to have two broken lines on this graph, one representing the high temperature, one representing the low temperature. So in September, the high temperature was about 81 degrees. So I put my point in October about 67, so maybe there. In November, about 57, so maybe there. In December, 47, and in January, 37. Once I've plotted my points, I'm going to need to make a line. And this looks like a good line. I think I'm going to have it be red again so I can connect the points. So I'm just going to connect the dots from September to October, from October to November, November to December, and my last point. So again, we'll look at this graph on Monday. Imagine yourself plotting these points for the low temperatures. Where would those low temperatures go? How would you connect those points? And then what information does the graph show you? Again, what conclusions can you draw from this graph? So remember, go back, view the video, look at the third slide, and think about what conclusions you can draw from that graph. Complete the two graphs that you're going to draw yourself to check for your understanding, and then look at this last graph. Imagine plotting those low points, and again, what conclusions can you draw? So on Monday, we'll be talking about line graphs and broken line graphs. Please come with any questions, with discussion that we can have about how we can use these graphs, what they show us.